He did it. He actually did it. I'm a day later and I'm still like, pinch me, did that actually happen? Rarely have I ever been this happy to be wrong. I mean, yeah, I laid out a pretty compelling case that got a lot of things right as far as why Nadal was not drawing dead in this match and could make it competitive and had a chance. But the way this played out, for him to do it the way he did, like, it still just hasn't computed. I mean, clearly over the course of this video I'm going to try to compute it, so let's get to the main course now in Nadal Djokovic. Putting it bluntly, if you ask me, and I don't think it's really recency bias, I think that this is Nadal's best win of his 30s. I just cannot say enough of how thrilled I am with how that match turned out. I'm going to try to not fanboy too much, but I'm sure some of it will leak out eventually. In one of the rarest sights you'll ever see in tennis, with Rafael Nadal almost unanimously being considered an underdog in a French Open match, he was able to come out victorious, ultimately taking back his court and what will always be his court in Philippe Chatrier. This time it was he that came out victorious in 4 sets over arch-rival Novak Djokovic. I still am so overwhelmed by this win. It really did mean everything to me. Still don't really know where to start off, but, let's just take it from the beginning. Just like the last 3 matches these two have contested in the last 3 years at Roland Garros, it was Nadal coming out, throwing haymakers, getting out to a flying start, and in my opinion, this particular match, his start for a set and a half was the most impressive of the bunch. For a set and a half, this really looked like one of those prime Nadal forehand purple patches, and I'm going to give myself a pat in the back for my call for heavy dosage of forehands up the line, because that is exactly what Nadal did for so much of this match, and he executed it to absolute perfection. For a set and a half, it seemed like he just was not missing that shot, and it was really just a blast from the past. It really felt like Roland Garros 2014 when, in the late stages of that match, another time where he was considered a bit of an underdog coming into that tournament. Not as much as this year, of course, but that match, his forehand just went nuclear after going down a set to Djokovic. This time, from the opening stages, he came out guns blazing with that shot. That and his backhand, really, in doing so, was able to make sure that he avoided getting into that troublesome pattern of getting stuck in his backhand corner and having to trade with Novak cross-court backhand to his forehand. Early on in this match, he just was not letting that happen, hammering both the forehand and backhand up the line. And for that stretch of 6-2, 3-0, I really was thinking to myself, like, what are the sports gods trying to do here? What fast one are they trying to pull on me? And sure enough, I got my answer very quickly. Nadal, a bit of a loose game at 3-0, just gave Djokovic an opening. I believe he had 3 forehand errors in that one game. And from that point on, Novak kind of understood what he had to do. Another thing that I got right in my previewing of this match was that I didn't think that night conditions were all that bad for Nadal on account of, his declined movement. It just gives him an opportunity to get a couple extra balls in play, and he doesn't really give you any free points on Chatrier as it is. And with slower conditions from the get-go this time, instead of slower conditions kind of easing their way in midway through the match as it went on last year, Nadal really was able to make Djokovic hit a lot of extra balls, and early portion of this match, it really felt like Novak was having a lot of trouble finishing points a la Roland Garros 2020. And unlike last year where it got more humid and it kind of drained Rafa's fuel tank to an extent, this time it seemed more cold, and at least to the naked eye from the outside looking in, it didn't seem like it would be as energy sapping. And indeed, as I noted, regardless, the Nadal forehand on Chatrier, with any half-decent version of him, the Nadal forehand is going to be the biggest shot on the court, and it was large and in charge very early in this match. Obviously, I talked about the little lapse up 3-0 serving, up a double break, and from that point, Novak really understood the assignment, knew what he had to do, started putting in a lot more juice on his forehands. He was ripping his forehand and really was rushing Rafa a lot, not letting him time his forehands that seemed to be automatic early in this match. And what was most impressive was the stretch of returning he had while he attempted this comeback in the second set. So often in that early Nadal zoning portion of this match, he was able to get a lot of relatively easy for him +1 forehand finishes. As the second set progressed, Novak pretty much got into this zone of returning that probably is the best we've ever seen against Nadal on Chatrier, at least for the span that he was able to pull it off. Those same balls that Nadal was getting +1 finishes off of all of a sudden were landing at his feet, and it really seemed like just about every first ball he was hitting after the serve in that stretch where Novak was able to claw back, he was hitting half volleys pretty much every time. And the way that set was going, really, once Novak got to 3-2 and was still down one break, I was getting very worried. I really thought that for Rafa to win this match, he was going to need a 2-set-to-love lead. And when Novak knotted it up with that furious comeback in the second set, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was over. I thought from this point, we were about to see Nadal pretty much give us a rerun of last year's semifinal. The only difference, I thought, was that Nadal this year, his zoning purple patch was just able to last a bit longer. Very early in the third set, however, there was a huge twist and wrench thrown in that as Djokovic kind of immediately came down from a purple patch of his own. To Nadal's credit, as Novak noted in the presser after, Nadal did a great job of applying pressure from the get-go in just about every set except the fourth, and he broke early in the third to kind of snap that momentum immediately. Even when he started missing that forehand up the line in the second set midway through, he picked it right back up in the third set, wasn't deterred, and didn't get shy on pulling the trigger on that shot. Still, it made a huge difference. Novak, on the other hand, really just put in a clunker of a set, and, that was something that I think was a bit underrated in his win last year, was that for 3 straight sets pretty much Novak Djokovic was able to play at an A+ level and never really blink. This third set, on the other hand, was an example of a bit of a lapse, and that's so hard to do. Obviously, you saw it yesterday, and it makes it clear that, what Djokovic did last year, it's not the norm. But on the other hand, I really was very, very impressed at Nadal's ability to just keep the pressure on, keep on coming, and be ready to put the foot on the gas if Novak gave any opening, and he sure did in that third set, and Rafa took full advantage. I really did not think that he was going to have that type of sharpness left in him, because in my mind, I thought there was no way that at a set apiece, for all intents and purposes, pretty much love all in the match again, having to play another best of 3 on top of what was a very rigorous 2 opening sets that took north of 2 hours. The second set in particular, just like last year's third, that took 90 minutes. This one was, I believe, in the range of 80 minutes, so just short of that, but Obviously, you never question Nadal's mental capacity. He's pretty much always there to jump on any laps. But I really was so impressed with the physicality aspect, because I do think that Nadal's endurance has improved this year. There's no doubt about that. There were a couple of years coming into this one where more and more frequently you were beginning to see Rafa tire more and more. But this year he proved in Australia, he can still push his body past the 5-hour mark, the second longest match of his career against Medvedev, coming in with a couple of tough matches prior to the final was Rafa, and then here he spends over 9 hours on court back to back in the span of 3 days, and the second of which came against Novak freaking Djokovic. It's just insane that his stamina has knocked back to an elite level this year. Obviously, I made note prior to this match that I didn't think the FAA 5-setter was all that physical in spite of going over 4 hours, but I still did have my questions, even knowing that he went past 5 hours to beat Medvedev. Djokovic is just a different beast, and the fact that he passed even that test from the stamina and physical perspective is just bonkers. All of this, by the way, at 3 days shy of his 36th birthday. And then when we got to the fourth, obviously, I think everybody knew that Novak was about to hone in again. Don't really think Rafa dipped much to give him the early break in the fourth. And for just about everyone watching, it seemed like we were inevitably headed to a fifth set. For the most part, Djokovic was holding pretty routinely, pretty easily throughout this set after getting the early break. Rafa as well, after being broken early, to his credit, made it a point of not really letting this set go, as Novak pretty much did in the third. He stayed within striking distance, keeping it only at a 1-break deficit. At the very least, that would have been beneficial in allowing him to serve first if they'd gone to 5. But, he did all the right things from that perspective. And how we didn't end up going 5, I will probably never know. You can probably count on your fingers in a match of such high stakes the amount of times that Novak Djokovic has ended up losing a lead like this, given the chances that he had. Nadal from 5-2 down, being able to win that set was just out of nowhere. And, Novak having his chances, 2 set points in the 5-3 game, an extended service game of his. But again, Rafa just kept the pressure on him, really came up with the goods in that game for his part. And in my opinion, that has been such a huge part in Nadal's success in 2022. It's not really that he's playing all that much better, in my opinion, save that tournament in Acapulco and matches like this one. But for the most part, it has been just the standard Rafa under Moya, just being more aggressive, executing that game plan. But in my opinion, ever since Rafa has exited his prime, he really has never been the same player mentally that he used to be. I think Apex Nadal, his mental strength was right up there with Djokovic's, and how it's been a constant through his rise. But Rafa, really, in his post-prime years, that mental strength has been knocked down a peg. Obviously, you can attribute some of that to the decline in physicality. When the speed declines just a bit, you just can't rely on defense and putting the ball back in those clutch moments as much, and the shots you have to go for are just higher degree of difficulty. I think that's been a part of it, but also Nadal has just squandered a couple of matches ever since 2015 pretty much, where you would never see him let go of leads like that, or just have some letdowns and some tight moments the way he has. His 5-set record since 2015, that same span, has nosedived from what it used to be before that. However, this year he has come up so clutch countless amount of times throughout this year. Don't know if it's on account of Australian Open, lifting a bit of pressure off his shoulders. but that has definitely been instrumental in him having as much success as he had this year, and it definitely came up huge in this match, particularly in the fourth set. He wouldn't blink the rest of the way pretty much, and even when we got to tiebreak, obviously Nadal fans were so worried given how our boy has, had so many tough breakers come out on the losing end in the last couple of years. And I did see the stat pop up on Twitter that until this match, he had still never won a tiebreak against a top 10 player since the 2019 World Tour Finals when he defeated Daniil Medvedev. But what a time to snap that streak. And to his credit, even 6-1 down in the breaker, Novak still made him play, made a couple of unbelievable rippers that were pretty much throwing caution to the wind, down 6-1 to make it 6-4 in a hurry. And still in the end, Rafa was able to come up with the goods, and perhaps fittingly, he won this match, hammering a backhand up the line off of one of those short cross-angled forehands from Novak that had essentially lost him the match last year. And just what can you say? Again, in my mind, this match was Rafa's best win of his 30s. This win really meant everything to me. I never thought that something so soon could top Aussie Open 22, and that's definitely an unpopular opinion, but that is how I feel for myself personally. Obviously, the Australian Open this year is always going to be bigger for his legacy, but given the circumstances and how much I highlighted in my preview, this was an uphill battle. Given Nadal's lack of prep coming into the French Open, and what a disastrous lead-up it was with all the fitness concerns, losing to Chapeau of all people, with all due respect. Playing in night conditions really didn't end up being that big a deal, but obviously Rafa doesn't prefer them. And while I never thought Nadal, even after this clay season, was finished per se, I definitely thought that Roland Garros would be just a bit too soon to pull something like this. No matter for Rafael Nadal, though, he just turns around and pulls off this absolute miracle. Just such a special win, and I know it was only a quarterfinal, but whether Rafa wins or loses this tournament, that should never degrade how meaningful what he pulled off yesterday was. Another chapter closed in what has been such an exceptional rivalry between the two fiercest competitors to ever play our sport. And as I said closing last video, we truly don't know how many more are left. Rafael Nadal has made that clear throughout this tournament that, hey, the end could be right around the corner. So truly, it is imperative that we just relish these while they still are happening, while these two are still out there competing. And yeah, I will continue to follow up throughout the remainder of this tournament. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I hope that you enjoyed. If so, it would be much appreciated if you could take a moment to drop a like and help this video perform better in YouTube's algorithm, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Thank you again so much for watching, and of course, I will see y'all in the next one.